welcome. My name is Mario Batali, and this is Molto Mario. I'm here with my good friends Summer, Michael, and Rain, and today we're talking about La Cucina Italiana. More specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about one of the most soul-satisfying concepts of all time, and one of the things that really serves to underline the matriarchal nature of the beautiful Cucina Italiana. That's right, we're talking about zuppe, or soups. The first one we're going to make is a classic minestrone. The second one we're going to make is a Zuppa di Lenticchie. Lentils. And the third one is going to be an artichoke soup with shiitake mushrooms, which is kind of a take on a classic using local ingredients found only in America. Now, of course, the first thing whenever you're making soup is you have to evaluate, first of all, is the broth going to be some meat stock or fish stock or vegetable stock? What you'll find traditionally in this largely agrarian society is that most often we're just using plain old ordinary water. And that's one of the reasons why when you taste these soups, they're going to be something that are so redolent of just the simple pleasure of exactly what's in it, and not this murky broth made with the feet of some other animal. It's going to be a clean and delicious thing, and that's really one of the great things about understanding Italian culture, is that they don't spend a lot of time before they start cooking making all this other stuff. They start with their materia prima, the very first ingredients that you get from the market. They shop with a vengeance. When they walk into a store, they fully expect to get the best thing in the store. They would never walk in and say, well, there's something 50% off because it's a week old. No, they go in, and although vegetables aren't that expensive, and sometimes they are in Italy, they go in and they buy the absolute best that they can because they realize they're going to nourish their family with it. And back to the matriarchal thing, that's where really soup is its expertise. Now, I'm going to start with a couple of simple things to make a minestrone, which translated, minestra means soup, but it can also be a first course based on grains. Sometimes they'll make like these barley kind of soups that look more like risotto. The minestrone is the big soup, using the enlarging suffix one. If you're familiar with the Italian language, there's a diminutive suffix, which is ini, like spaghetti, spaghettini. Spaghettoni would be the big one.
I'm familiar with the Italian language, but what is that you're chopping there?
This is a cipolla, a red onion, and we're going to, as usual, spark it up in a pretty hot pan. And we're going to start with just the onions. Now, at this point, the building blocks or the steps are really all that matters. And even if you went out of order, it wouldn't make that much of a difference. But what you have to think about is, as things cook, are they going to fall apart? And in thinking about that, do you want them to fall apart more quickly or less quickly? And if you want them to fall apart more quickly, you cut them into smaller pieces. And if you want them to retain their texture or their size, you cut them into larger pieces. So I want this to be relatively soft, but this is going to take a little bit less time than the potato. So I'm going to cut the zucchini here into bigger pieces, and I'm going to cut the potato into smaller pieces. So, salt, huge issue. Why do we use salt? Well, we use salt to flavor things, but we also use salt because of the chemical effect it's going to have on whatever we're cooking. If you add salt at the beginning, or to anything for that matter, at any time, it'll immediately start to exude its liquid. That's what salt does to the cell wall. It forces the cell wall to start to break out whatever's inside it, which is why when you're sick, you have a sore throat, you gargle with salt. The salt causes the infection to come out and go away.
He's
and the same thing.
Too.
Yeah. Well, I'm not really an MD, I just play one on TV. So now the potatoes are in, and so is the zucchini, and I want those potatoes to immediately start giving up their liquid because I want them to break down more quickly. So I'm going to stir that through, and then celery, tomatoes, leeks, and beans. And when you're talking about minestrone in Italy, generally there's some kind of a legume or a dried bean in it. The way that you deal with those is that you soak them overnight in cold water, and then the next morning you drain out that water, and that's exactly what we have left here. And these look just a little bit more swollen than your regular bag of dried beans, and that's because we've soaked them. What happens then is that they cook more easily and more quickly. Now I'm going to cut the leeks up until the beginning of the green, about halfway through.
Do you put carrots in this at
all? No, there's no carrots in this particular minestrone. The leeks, however, this green stuff sometimes gets a little dirty.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a little hard to chew. So what you want to do is rinse these off, and then if you want to make a vegetable stock, this is one of the best things. These onions and garlic in your vegetable stock are going to guarantee success. Now I'm going to take 4 canned tomatoes, and I'm just going to crush them a little bit. They're going to eventually fall apart because I'm going to... Yes, fresh tomatoes I almost exclusively use raw. I slice them, I put a little salt, I put a little oil on them, And that's, for me, the way to eat a fresh tomato. Yeah. I will sometimes toss a little spaghetti with that same kind of chopped tomato thing, but if I'm going to cook them a long time, there's no reason to use the raw ones. I use, for these cooking, even in the summer, I'll use this kind here. So now I'm going to take a cup of beans, cup and a half of borlotti.
What was the first bean?
Borlotti. That's the Italian way of calling them a kidney bean.
Okay.
And they're very popular in Emilia-Romagna, from which this soup is actually based.
And
I'm going to take
white bean here?
And those are cannellini beans. They're a little bit longer than the Great Northern beans.
Why not save some of the soaking water and use that in the stock?
Because I find that that actually holds starch. Now there are different cookbooks that will challenge that idea, but I think that it makes it a little murkier. Because the soaking water has picked something up from them, and often enough it is that starch. And not that starch is a bad thing, it's just I'm looking for that kind of pristine, clear fall day feel to my soup. And that's kind of what we're looking for. Now, lentils, on the other hand, you don't have to soak. And I haven't soaked those lentils. We're just going to use them dry. One of the cool ways to use lentils, aside from making this soup like we're going to make here, is to actually soak the lentils and then never ever boil them at all. Then you just saute them in extra virgin olive oil, and you get this kind of crisp caviar thing going on that's really cool. Now, for the lentil soup, I'm going to make it more about the lentil itself. So I've got a little vegetable stock in the back that I made with leeks, garlic, onions, and carrots that I've roasted until they're really brown, and then just thrown them in with the water and made this stock, which is what I have over here.
You can chop like that and talk.
Oh, it's easy to chop. Once you've done it like 30 times, it's like playing guitar and trying to sing, which I've never been able to do together. So now I have the lentils.
But your band, Los Hongos, I hear that you're
We're still in the very conceptual phase with that band.
Right.
So now, I've got my lentils, I've got my onions, I've got my garlic. I have no spice whatsoever. I'm going to take my broth, and that's going to come up to an immediate boil. When that happens, I'm going to immediately drop an artichoke off the back, and I'm going to toss about a cup of dried pasta, whatever shape you want. When we come back, I'll show you how you bring the whole thing together, and then we're going to also make a pesto with no cheese whatsoever that's going to drizzle through our soup, so please, stay with us. Hey, welcome back. Now, with our lentil soup, we wouldn't just serve it plain like that. We need to make a little chili oil. Because this is a soup based on the concept of Umbria, which is below Tuscany there, and just a little spicy and a little mysterious. What we're going to do is going to take some of these dried chili flakes, about a tablespoon.
Would you ever make chili oil with fresh chilies?
Sure. But then they have an even more elusive and spectacular heat, which is good. I love the idea of using it with dried chilies like these right here. Just chop them up. You might want to soak them in a little bit of water. Then do exactly what I'm doing here. That is to say, just sautéing them kind of quickly with some garlic cloves and just kind of bringing it around like that. And then you just let it sit there. And if you want to make it look like it's an emulsified thing, which is totally counterintuitive to the Italian culture, then you would put it in the food processor. But they like to serve it like this. As a matter of fact, in a lot of Italy, particularly the South, they love to call a dish like this, an oil like that, olio santo, holy oil, which I love the idea of. Now, so we have our beautiful Zuppa di Lenticchie, and what we're just going to do...
Is soup usually, is it a first course?
Well, now that's a very good question. It's a first course. In the traditional style of Italian food, antipasti, which we're all familiar with now, was actually considered an affectation of the rich up until about the middle of the 20th century, only for those really super snotty people that lived in the cities. But in fact, the main first course was called a primo, which is what this is, would either be a grain-based or a pasta-based course, or a soup like this. And they never even had antipasto. Now, hold on. Here we have our... Who wants chili oil?
I love it spicy.
Just a little drizzle like that. And it just floats and you can smell. This is called the Breakfast of Champions in Umbria. Oh, yeah.
See, who would want to emulsify that?
Right, exactly. Well, you know who wants to emulsify something like that? Trendy American chefs trying to reinvent the wheel. Which is all right, you know, someone's got to do that. But we don't have to live there. Now, go ahead and try the soup. It's going to be a little warm, but it won't be too hot. Now, with our minestrone, which is going here deliciously and just simmering away. One of the ways that they'll often serve soups like this is they'll cook it like this. They'll let it sit until the next day.
Oh my gosh, this
is that tasty?
Great.
Beautiful. So they'll take a minestrone, they'll make it, they'll let it sit till the next day, and it'll be a soup for a week. And the first soup is called Zuppa di Frantoio. The second week is Zuppa di Ba Ba Ba. And they'll change the name every day. And as it starts to dry out and thicken up, they'll make it into something different. So the first day it's soup like this.
Do they ever freeze it, or?
You could freeze this, but they generally would. A pot of soup generally would last about a week, and you just eat it every day, and they have no problem with that.
You'd refrigerate it, though.
Right, you'd refrigerate it. And often enough, though, this would be served at room temperature. The second day, maybe they'll take it out, and they'll put it in a bowl, and they'll allow it to sit until everyone gets home from lunch, just out, and then they'll serve it with just a drizzle of oil and a hot bruschetta.
So cold?
Well, room temperature, not really cold out of the fridge. The Italians have a problem with refrigeration in general.
Right.
Much like the French have problems with their showers.
There is no cold soup.
No, they don't serve any cold soup in Italy. I mean, they maybe in trendy restaurants that are more internationally based, but certainly cold out of the fridge is something they would just not eat. Almost anything out. They don't eat their fruit out of the refrigerator. They like to eat their fruit at the temperature that it was harvested as. So now what we're going to make for our minestrone is a little bit of pesto. But instead of making the traditional pesto genovese, we're going to just take basil, pine nuts, a touch of garlic, and olive oil, and make...
Pesto's always normally made with cheese?
It depends. It depends on the beauty of Italian culture is that from grandma to grandma, from cook to cook, they appreciate the variation in the dishes. So always is never the rule. I mean, traditionally the pesto genovese, that is the pesto that we know of, is often enough made with pecorino and parmigiano and some kind of a nut. Now the trick to making a good pesto is to chop it like this before you add the oil, and then realize that it's not supposed to be a vinaigrette. It's not supposed to be some emulsified oil. It's just going to be kind of this.
So it can be any nut to make a pesto, not just pine nuts?
Oh, absolutely. They use walnuts. They use, you know, the way that most Italian cooking has been developed over the years, and when you talk about traditional recipes and traditional cooking, it's really whatever grew around them.
Right.
They didn't import ingredients from Liguria to Naples or from Calabria to Venice. They used whatever's around them, and they're actually fiercely proud of that. And they would never bring an ingredient from another thing. If there's anything that could be boasted about when you're at the market is this word called nostrano, which means that it's from our land. And that is the highest prize that you can pay to an Italian. If you think about what an Italian really wants, they want to eat something that smells like the food that they grew up smelling in their house. Whenever they go to a restaurant, there's nothing, when the Italians would never say, well, where's the best place to eat in town? They would say a restaurant. They only go to restaurants because they don't want to clean up. Really the best place to eat is at their mom's house or their aunt's house or their Aunt Tilly's house or their grandpa's house or at this little roadside stand that just happens to have picked these apples and serves them with prosciutto. So that's the real main event.
So if you lived in Hawaii, you could make pesto, though, out of macadamia nuts.
Macadamia nuts and pineapple leaves or whatever. That's exactly what they would do. So now, that's the pesto that I just made. All it was basil, salt, oil, garlic. And now we're going to take this beautiful minestrone, this big soup, and the way you serve this is you bring it to the table in this steaming tureen, and everyone's standing around there trying to figure out what the heck's going on, and then you just pile this on right in the middle, and it floats, and all of a sudden the whole fragrance, it's all of a sudden, no matter what time of the year you make this, all of a sudden it's August and September again, and the basil comes up, and the strings go wild in the back.
And the raw garlic in that, it's going to cook a bit.
It's now just starting to cook in here, and there wasn't that much. There was only 3 cloves in this whole thing right here, and it just becomes really, really fragrant. So there you have minestrone. The next thing we're going to make is a beautiful artichoke soup, so please stay with us. Welcome back. I'm here with my good friends Summer, Michael, and Rain, and we're talking a little bit about zuppe. We're eating a little bit of zuppe. These are 2 very traditional zuppe. Now we're going to make one that isn't so traditional, although still based on the ingredients that we love. The first thing we're going to do is going to create this kind of sweet caramelized garlic. And the way I do that is I get my pan pretty hot, and then I take about a dozen cloves of garlic and toss them in there and just allow them, all right, so it's 2 dozen cloves of garlic.
So just whole like that?
Just whole like that, and you're going to see what's going to happen to them there. It's a very, very cool thing. We're going to caramelize them a little bit so that they're nice and toasty golden brown, and then we're going to add this really amazing stuff called sweet red vermouth. And it's just going to caramelize them. You're going to see it's going to give this toasty flavor that is just so darn good. So you have to watch this carefully because this first step is the whole game so that you don't overcook that garlic. Because once you've burnt the garlic, the whole day's over. Yeah. Might as well just wash it up. And now I'm going to splash in about a cup of that Cinzano. And what it's going to do...
Anywhere?
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be... It can be any brand. It's just sweet red vermouth. They use it for like 2 cocktails in the whole world. And one of them's the Manhattan. So now we've got that going, and what that's going to do is eventually burnish those cloves. It's going to cook them like they're roasted cloves. The next ingredients are very simple. Everyone is going to work an artichoke.
Now, is this like a real artichoke, just if not fully grown yet? Or?
No, there's probably 20 or 30 different varieties of artichoke in Italy, and the small ones like this won't necessarily turn into bigger ones. What happens when this turns into its full size, which is just a little bit bigger than this, eventually it will flower, which is to drop its seed, which is just like any plant. The way we're going to do is we're going to cut off the tip end. Then we're going to cut about 2/3 of the way down here, further toward the end, like so. You just want to cut like that all the way around, right? Yeah. Then we're going to take the outer leaves, peel them off like so, till you get to those very tender white ones. Then again with the knife, stripping down from this cut stem end, just to kind of remove that skin.
Now, these don't seem to have those kind of spiny hairs.
That's what we love about these, because it has a little bit of the choke inside there, but it's not that big of a deal. It's really something that we want to. We love it, and that's the reason we love these little ones, because you can just eat them whole like this. And as a matter of fact, you can actually eat these raw. I'll serve a couple of these raw on some bruschetta at the last minute. Done? Toss it in.
What's this water?
I'm humiliated.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. Keep trimming. Here's the thing: is you've approached your knife skills as a whittler, and what you wanted to do was actually use your hands coming back toward you, which gives you a lot more control. This water, as you were asking, is acidulated water. What will happen to an artichoke is it will eventually oxidize. Oxidize. And that oxidization will cause it to turn a funny brown color.
Like avocados?
Exactly, like anything. And so what you want to do is add a little acidity, and that actually stops it. Wow. So I'm going to save 2 of these because we're going to make these into this beautiful garlic bread. But we're going to toss these in right here, just like that.
Yum.
And already you know that we're in the right place. I'm going to add a little bit more oil because now what I've created there is a little bit of this caramel liquid that is actually delicious, but it doesn't have the intensity heat that I need to actually cook these chokes. So I'm going to add a little bit more oil, bring the chokes back up to a heat. Now, if you could hand me any chili of your choice there, Rain.
Could you...
Excellent choice.
Could you use canned artichokes, or you just would not want to trouble with them?
The problem with canned artichokes and with canned vegetables in general, not that I hate them, because I think canned beans are really good, but the tendency for anything that was ever green is that they put a lot of salt in it. And all of a sudden you're really eating a heck of a lot of sodium, which isn't bad if you're in great shape, or even if you're not in great shape, but it's just, I don't think that it tastes like what it should taste like. It doesn't taste that much like a fresh artichoke. Now, I've got these beautiful shiitake mushrooms, which they never use in Italy.
Yeah, we were gonna...
But what we use all the time in America, and this is a good example of how to kind of adapt these classic ingredients or classic dishes to our local ingredients. So we're going to take these shiitakes, which are from Pennsylvania right here on the East Coast, and they're delicious. And if Italians could have these, they would definitely use them because they're delicious.
Mario,
they have
where
a great
do they
texture.
hail from?
They're
normally?
There's a town in Pennsylvania, and they grow them on these. I'll remember the name of the town in a minute. But they grow them on these logs that are in these barns, and they're absolutely cool, local. We're celebrating the flavors of exactly what we're all about. So now we've got our artichokes.
What would an Italian family use? What sort of mushroom?
They would use whatever they found. They have pratioli, they have cremini mushrooms, they have portobello mushrooms, they have shiitake mushrooms. I mean, they don't have shiitake mushrooms, they have chanterelles, basically any kind of mushroom you can find. Whatever it is, basically, it's often enough foraged for.
What are you adding there?
I'm adding basic tomato sauce. And then what I'm going to do is add just water again. And I added that chili there. We're going to bring this up to the boil. When we come back, I'll show you how we finish up a little sweet garlic bread with some raw artichokes on it. So please, stay with us. Hey, welcome back. Now we're just going to finish up our soup here. I'm taking a little bit of grilled bread off and giving it the little sandpaper technique with a little bit of garlic. Then I'm going to take these raw artichokes and slice them wafer thin, just like so. And they're raw, and they're going to echo in a very literary way the flavor of the cooked artichoke underneath them in the soup that we've just made. And all we're going to do is take some lemon juice, a little sea salt, touch of chilies, some extra virgin olive oil, and then we're going to take that whole mess and spoon it right over those little pieces of toast. And already we're talking about a snack that could serve up exactly what you wanted to do. Then what we're going to do is, while that bread's still hot, just the tiniest little bit of extra virgin olive oil. And there's now what would be called the bruschetta di carciofi. Then we're going to serve up the soup like so. And the only way, of course, you could improve on this soup is the tiniest little drizzle of extra virgin olive oil like so. And there you have it, a beautiful and yet not traditional soup of mushrooms and artichokes. I want to thank you guys for being here. You made it a heck of a lot of fun. I want to thank you guys for being here. We look forward to seeing you on the next Molto Mario. Ciao.